Welcome to Grandpa Hill's True Stories. This is a faith and family story about the Don and Mary Hill family deciding to trust God and be content. In 1989, we had decided to trust God a whole lot more than we ever had. Trusting we would never get too much to do or too heavy of a burden. We knew when we thought about it and realized that we were trusting God as we thought we should, that we were more and more often being content. Contentment is realizing that God has already provided everything I need for my current happiness. In 1989, we were still in Savage, Minnesota. We had recently started homeschooling, and it was tough. The kids didn't really like it because it was a big change, and Mom wasn't a teacher. Mary's seizures had started back up. She had had 11 months without any seizures. And the tubal reversal hadn't even happened yet. We were going to do that in November of that year. So what we were doing seemed right, but also crazy. Crazy or countercultural. It wasn't what people were doing, but it's what we decided that we should do. It's where our hearts were. It was so crazy that we had to keep reminding ourselves. And we had to take remedies like developing a network of friends and acquaintances and support groups and all kinds of interesting things to help us get through the days. We also had the TV turned off. A big change. Better change, but big change. We were looking forward to the future, being very committed to how our children were trained to be virtuous, with good character. Then more changes were coming. I got a phone call. The phone call was from a headhunter. The phone rang right out in the middle of the plant where I was working at Hitchcock Industries, down in Lakeville. And it rang, and I answered it, and it was a headhunter. And he wanted me to interview with Alcoa in Pennsylvania. I told the headhunter, I've interviewed with Alcoa before. They didn't want me. I don't think this is a good idea. So the headhunter, he convinced me that it would be all right. Let's do it. Now, he probably convinced me, I'm thinking, because he gets paid anyways for getting the interview to happen. So that's what we put together. We were going to have an interview. And we did have that interview. And it was kind of an awkward little interview because it started out with me being late for an interview. And now that time's gone by, when candidates that I know are late for interviews that I'm going to have with them, it kind of sinks the whole idea of hiring them. Never be late for your interviews. So I was late for my interview. I had made a wrong turn. And when I got there, I was standing in front of the man that I was going to start my interview process with, which was Chuck West. And Chuck West has one eye. And he's looking at me. And he's turning his head left and right. And he says, I've met you before. And I said, yes, Chuck, you've met me before. But I don't remember where or when it was. I said, well, Chuck, you were standing right about where you are now, and I was standing right about where I am now, and we were going to have a job interview. And we did, and I didn't get hired. That's how that job interview started. But I did get the job. And then I moved into a little town called Salzburg. And in the little town, I lived up above the hardware store in December of 1989, waiting to get established and moved my family out in the spring. I ended up finding a rental just by talking to people, hoping, praying, needed to find a place. We had a place. I saw Mary again on Valentine's Day weekend to do some house hunting. We drove around, showed her the house we would be renting. Then a few weeks later, the renters paid for the airline tickets to fly my family out. All of our goods arrived on a big moving van, and then the renters, who had paid for the tickets, they're like adopted grandparents out of the Savage, Minnesota area, they drove the family car out so that we would have a second car. Shortly after that, we find a house for $20,000. Who can imagine a $20,000 house on 2 acres? Remember, it's 1989. We were told later that we paid too much for it. So shortly after Mary moved to Pennsylvania, the reversal had been done back in November, and we conceived our 5th child. So we bought that little house for $20,000, and now we were going to have 5 children in a little tiny ranch house, with the basement completely stocked with all of our junk that we hadn't gotten rid of yet. Andrew, our son, struggled to survive. Difficult for him to rest or gain weight. Then Mary had a miscarriage in 1991 and conceived again in 1992. Now she was expecting our 6th child. And the house was cramped and the basement stacked, and I realized we should get a bigger place. So Mary Lee was given a choice. She chose a different place to be bigger. I had told her that we could make the one we were in bigger by adding on or buy a different place, and she desperately wanted a different place. I was explaining how I had given Mary this choice to a Father Jim Vassell at St. Matthew's in Salzburg as we were walking out after visiting with him, and he told us that we should talk to Father Mike Matusak. The Holy Cross Church in Island, Pennsylvania was for sale. It wasn't Island, it was closed, and it was for sale. How could that be? Aren't they like sacred places? How could you be selling a church? And he assured me, not so. This building wasn't in that category, and it could be sold. So we went to look at the property, and it was a church. All the glass was out of it, out of the windows, and the pews were out, and all the altar stuff was out. And the basement was also complete. And there were bathrooms downstairs, and then the property included the rectory. And the rectory was like 4 bedrooms, 2.5 baths. There were also 2 two-car garages, and it was a table flat acre with no really close neighbors in a little village in Island, Pennsylvania. This fit the bill. Granted, it would probably be expensive, but we were also trying to follow principles and did not want a big mortgage. And I decided to make an offer for the church building. Again, we pray about it. We don't know what's going to happen. I offer $30,000. Father accepts the offer. We were hoping they would take into account how nice it would be to selling the building to a Catholic family, and that we were going to be homeschooling, and we would probably use the building for good purposes. And the people that had been going to church there for about 100 years, over the years, generations, that they would not be too disturbed. Father accepts the offer. He was just going to review it with the parish council. Okay, it's a deal. I told Father, wow, we're going to get a house. About 2 weeks go by, and I call Father Mike again. How's it going, Father? Is everything okay? Oh, Don, I'm so glad you called. I met with the council, and we all agreed. And that's where I thought he was going to say that I could have the house. We all agreed that the parish should accept sealed bids on the property. You see, there are other people interested in the property, at least 2 other people, and to be fair and assure that nobody is playing favorites, we need to receive sealed bids. Okay, I'm still going to offer what I offered already, Father. Yes, that is fine. Just submit your bid and we will see how it goes. Okay, when do I need to submit it? Well, actually, you need to submit it tomorrow. Yes, we are meeting tomorrow. We will open the bids then. Then I question him. Father, tomorrow, when were you going to call me? Yes, Don, I forgot. I am sorry. As I said, I am so glad you called. I probably would have gone to the meeting without your bid in hand. I assured him I would get a sealed bid to him before the meeting tomorrow. About 5 o'clock, about 2 hours before the meeting, I handed him my envelope with a hot wax seal on it with a letter. The letter introduced me to the council and described the house and church property on the 1 acre in Island, Pennsylvania, and my offer of $30,000. 2 days went by. I did not have to call. I knew quite well the property was worth way more than $30,000. It would be right for a different parishioner to win the bid. We would be happy. We'd find something else. We prayed as a family, and we hoped we would get the home. We had those 5 children and another one on the way. We were homeschooling, and it was cramped in that little place. We really thought we should be getting this church building, but didn't really expect it either with the $30,000. But we also thought we really shouldn't be offering more than $30,000 because it would mean a little bit of a financial crunch at the time. So we would likely just keep looking and trust that we would do the best right thing in God's eyes and always believe that principle about contentedness. Believing that God has already provided all that we need for our current happiness. We repeated that a few times while we were in that time of not knowing about this church building and not knowing how our offer was received. Quite a few times. We are content. We believe God's already provided. We wanted that house so bad, and at that moment, we knew the directions. Be content and happy regardless. The next night after work at home, when we still had a landline and we did not have a personal computer, we got a call from Father Mike. So no text, no email, none of that stuff. We had won the bid. Really? No way. My number was such a low number, Father. He explained. We won the bid because we were the only bidder. It turns out that both of the other interested parties would not buy the church. They would pay a good deal more than the $30,000, but the bid was for the entire property. So, the rectory with 4 bedrooms, 2.5 baths, 2 two-car garages, and the church building on a table flat acre in Island, Pennsylvania, was going to be ours. Oh my, we were just so happy, content. Thousands of square feet in the church building. It wasn't a huge church, but when it's empty, there's a lot of floor space. And we had a lot of ideas about things we would do. Ours, all ours. We got the house. I'm off to make the loan. I put $10,000 down and borrow $20,000 on a 10-year loan. Easy peasy loan, probably will pay it off early. Then I call Father Mike to set up an appointment. We will be purchasing from the Diocese of Greensburg, he says. Bishop Bosco will be the seller, and the Hills will be the buyer. A week goes by. Another call from Father Mike. The house can't be sold. That was the message. The church building can't be sold. The house can't be sold. The property can't be sold. As it turns out, the Peabody Coal Company that used to own the town had given the property to the diocese for use as a church or as a school. Then, when the Peabody Coal Company wasn't interested anymore, all the property and all the legal concerns were sold to the Kovalcheks in Indiana, Pennsylvania. With the Hills not being an official school and not being a church, the ownership of the unused property would go back to the Kovalcheks. A little heart-dropping. Gosh, I thought we had it. So close. But there was going to be no nice, inexpensive, perfect for our family house and church building. It just wasn't going to happen. So Father Mike then told me not to lose heart. He was not to be bullied. His family had been coal miners. He was not fond of the way people were treated by the coal companies or the people that bought up the towns and then rented them out, sold properties, or tore down the old houses and churches, all for making some more money off of, in his opinion, the backs of the miners. He told me his plan. He was going to advise the Kovalcheks that the property would still be used as a church. He's not going to lie. He's going to use it as a church. He was erecting a chapel in the corner and would say Mass there once per year. This odd arrangement would be advertised, and all in the county would know that the Hill family was put out and the church was put out because the Kovalcheks would just not let it go. Father assured me he knew the Kovalcheks, and they would not want such an arrangement made nor known to the people of the county of Indiana, Pennsylvania. Father was right. Later that week, the property was sold to the Diocese of Greensburg for $1. Then a few days later, it was sold to Donald and Mary and their 6 children for $30,000. We moved in the spring of 1992 and made that place our home. We had Christmases, Easter, family prayer time, gardening. In the church, we had square dances once a month. We had a bakery in the basement where we called Brian's Bakery. My 15-year-old son started that bakery. We had volleyball games. We had a homeschoolers drama production, a play on St. Francis of Assisi, and everybody had a place to sit. There even was a homeschoolers high school prom held in the building. As it turned out, the house and the church were the product of many updates to buildings that were first erected before World War I. So in no way was it a perfect or modern house. What it was ours. By the grace of God, it was ours. A journey that started with Father Jim Vassell telling us of the opportunity. A journey that started with our commitment to homeschooling and to having children, which had also somehow prompted somebody to call me to come to Pennsylvania. It's just wild how it all starts kind of working out. So yes, Father Mike was forgetful. But yes, Father Mike went to bat for us against the owners of the property to get the transfer and sale made. We were completely content and trusting God. Mary Therese was born later that year of 1992, and then Michael was born, and John was born, and there were 2 more miscarriages, and the children had a lot of space and freedoms to grow as they were homeschooled. 6 of them have gotten married. 2 of the 4 girls have professed their final vows and are religious sisters. And we, Don and Mary, we want to take this opportunity to express our gratitude to God, to the Island community, the Good Shepherd Parish of Kent, to Father Mike Matusak, who has since passed away, to Father Jim Vassell, who has since passed away, to the parishioners of the Good Shepherd Parish, and to Bishop Bosco, who has since passed away, and the Kovalchuks. We also need to say, our 25 grandchildren bring us so much joy. And as you may guess, we are so very content because we know that God has provided everything we need for our current happiness. Now, real quick, before anything fades, do us a favor. Do someone else a favor. Share this story. It might encourage, it might change a life, it might just make somebody laugh. And to the next Grandpa Hill's true story, Shalom, Shalom.